All right, what's up, everybody? I'm here with one of my mentors, Dax Moy. If you have listened to anything I've said, it's a lot of it's influenced by Dax, and I mention Dax often. Dax is the creator of Mind Map. He's really like a living legend in my mind. I mean, I really look up to this guy. So, Dax, thanks for being with me this morning.
Thanks, brother. What a nice welcome. That's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I was talking with one of my buddies I was working out with this morning about I don't know if you heard Louis Simmons pass yesterday, but from
Did
West
not
Side
know.
Barber. Yeah, so Louis passed. He was a mentor as far as strength went to me. But it made me. I was really thinking about my mentors, and like three of them have passed in the past 2 years. So, uh, I don't take for granted your knowledge and your wisdom, and hopefully you're with us for another 50 years.
I'm
It
so,
really made me start
you
thinking.
got me a bit worried now. Let's keep
No, no, no. I didn't want. I'm not
keep
jinxing.
Jesus Christ.
But it really made me start thinking, man. Okay, I got Dax.
There's not any kind of like reverse correlate between kind of who you choose as a mentor. Life
I'm like, what's going on here?
expectancy.
I'm not getting
Oh
at
crap!
it. So let's talk
My
about
turn.
yeah, no, you'll be with us at least another 50 years, man, 50, 60 years. Let's dive into just a little bit about your background in the special forces. Maybe talk a little bit about the tsunami, because I don't think a lot of people know that story, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, just to set the record straight, I wasn't actually special forces, but I was airborne commando, and I worked in an area it's very akin to special forces, but it's not special forces. It's special operations aspects, which included like training for four-man patrols behind enemy lines and all that kind of stuff. Very similar, but there was none of the kind of hostage rescue bit and the kind of, all of that kind of stuff. So I definitely wasn't special forces, and I also spent most of my time actually as a reservist. So kind of I was in the regulars. I joined the regular armed forces when I was just 16 as a boy soldier. But I spent most of my time in the reserves and absolutely loved it because it gave me the freedom to do a lot more than being a regular soldier would have allowed me, and it also gave me the ability to kind of not be. I love soldiers and I love military kind of from all branches all around the world. I think that they're amazing people, but there's a way of being kind of sucked into it so deeply that you lose wider perspective on what it's like to be, I guess, just a bit more of a, whether it be a national citizen or a global citizen, because everything gets seen through the eyes of the military. And, they do a brilliant job of indoctrinating you into that in all the best, and you could say the worst ways, right? Like it's fantastic being a soldier to a degree, but then there's also a lot of, by necessity, to be able to function and operate with a military mindset, you have to other people. You have to see some people as being worthy of more value and other people as being worthy of less. And it's part of the indoctrination process. You couldn't possibly ever get yourself out into the world doing what a soldier might have to do and be kind of love and kindness and kind of, I think everybody is wonderful and we all deserve to live our lives equally, and really believe that and do the job. The things don't correlate, right? The math doesn't add up. So yeah, I spent most of my time as a reservist, which was fantastic. But I guess kind of what I'm really, and I'm really thankful because I took a lot of stuff that I learned in the military into my civilian life, and it kind of really set me up in a lot of really positive ways in terms of discipline, that whole aspect of making commitments and seeing them through. The idea of being like a real problem solver, because that's what military are more than anything else. They're going to be the kind of bombarded by different problems, everything from logistical to weather to environmental to obviously the enemy and everything in between, and you have to be a real problem solver on the fly, on the go, in order to kind of make anything decent of being a soldier. And so I carried a lot of that into my civilian career, which for I started out as a personal trainer 24 years ago now. I haven't worked exclusively as a trainer for at least about the last 7. It's not like leading clients through workouts or anything like that. Most of my work now has been more in the life, what most people would call the life coaching side of things, but coaching, transformational coaching, and the education of coaches like yourself and like others into how to understand not just the pop psychology, you could say, and I don't mean that derogatorily to anybody, but not just pop psychology, but from a neuroscience perspective, like what does the brain actually want? Not what are the world's leading kind of performance coaches saying we should do to be successful, but what is the brain actually saying? No, here's what you need to do, and then once you give me that, I'll let you go and play in this part of your brain, which is the part that lets you get successful. So I'm kind of much more interested in that side of things. Although, to be very, very clear, for years I was the goal achievement guy. I was the, if you want it badly enough, you'll do it. I was the write your goals down and pursue them with all vigor. I had a best-selling book on goal achievement, and I believed in it 1 billion%. I believed that was the right way to achieve it, because up until the point where life served me up a different perspective, I truly believed that we really get what we work hard for. And if you commit to it, you keep working hard, you put some muscle into your hustle and all that kind of stuff, that you will basically get whatever you want. And it worked for me brilliantly until the day it didn't. And
we'll talk about that. When did life serve you up that lesson that wasn't the way?
Yeah, so I was in the tsunami with my family. And thankfully, thank God none of us were hurt. But none of us were hurt physically. I guess later on I realized I've been hurt quite heavily psychologically from it, but none of us were hurt physically. We all got into the hotel, we got our kids safe, and then my wife and myself, we went back out, and I went out into the water and I set her up in a kind of little first aid post in the hotel, in the lobby and the car park. And so I went back out into the water and spent a couple of hours in the water dealing with literally everything from heart attacks to drownings to amputations to you name it. I mean, pretty much, if you imagine, it's funny, I went on a first aid course at the end of last year. It was a wilderness first aid course for people that lead people in the mountains and all that kind of stuff. And part of that, they were talking to us, and the instructor kept saying, I mean, this is like a once in a lifetime injury. You probably, we train you for it, but you'll never see this. And this is a once in a lifetime thing. And we train you for this and you'll never see it. And at the end of the course, I said, all those things you said, I get that they're once in a lifetime, but I must have just had a really weird lifetime, because in a 2-hour period of my life, every injury and every permutation of everything you said, we'd never see in our lifetime. I dealt with all of that.
Wow.
And I really did. So it kind of got through the tsunami, a bit shook up by it, but I guess partly the military thing and partly the I had a lot of training in first aid and combat medicine and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of just shook it off and got on with life. And I got on with life for about 6-7 years, and then woke up one day and PTSD came to pay a visit, and I was getting very, very visual flashbacks and like multi-sensory, like I could smell and hear and taste all of the experiences of that day, including spitting out seawater and all of that kind of, like, literally I was smashed by this kind of revisitation of the experience, and it just kept coming back to the point where I was, for about 1.5 years, I was only sleeping for about 5 hours a week, 5-6 hours a week for the whole week. So some days I'd get 90 minutes, other days I'd get 45 minutes, but it went on for ages. And I obviously, when your brain is a bit screwed, you don't sleep, but then when you're not sleeping, your brain gets a bit screwed. So it kind of the loop went on and on and on. And I tried everything, particularly, when I say I tried everything, most people give that as like a throwaway kind of thing. I tried everything. I literally tried everything. I'd been to counselors and therapists. I had taken like alternative kind of, I did crystal healing. I had Hopi medicine man dance over me and blow smoke and beat drums over me in Sedona in Arizona. There's these like horse whisperer kind of things, and you go to sensory deprivation tanks. Like everything that you could think a person might do. I sought out spiritual gurus. I did all kinds of stuff. And some of it worked better than the other, but it was nearly all temporary and nearly all kind of, it was quite, it was short-lived, and most of it didn't really touch the problem, which means that there was never really a solution. It was temporarily, I felt a bit better, and I felt like I'd kind of let some of that, let some of the water out of the overflowing sink for a short period of time. And then obviously I put the plug back in and it fills back up and now it's overflowing again. And that's kind of what it was like for me. And, you know, I'd always been this goal achiever guy, the guy who writes books on goal achievement, the guy who tells everybody how to achieve their goals, and the guy who made loads of money from doing that. And now I'm like, I can't get out of my pajamas for 5 days in a row. I sit, you know, on the edge of my bed when I get up in the morning and stare at the wall and burst into tears. Literally, I was people say shadow of your former self. I really was. I was very, very different. And all of the things that I was teaching people up to that point, you know, set a big goal and pursue it with all vigor and hustle and all that, none of that worked to get me out of the crap that I was in. And yeah, I mean, that's when I came back to, I'd been a neuro rehab specialist from the physical side of things. So I got people with strokes out of wheelchairs and all of that, you know, kind of stuff. And I had a really, really good knowledge of neuroscience when it came to the physical side. I was able to accomplish things that most people said couldn't be done. And then one day, you know, I was like, this is enough. And I'm trying to smash through with goal achievement and hustle and hard work and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe there's something in neuroscience that can help me understand what's going on here and what needs to be done to fix it. Because sure as hell, pop psychology isn't working. Sure as hell, goal setting isn't working. Sure as hell, positive thinking isn't working. You know, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we all talk about the positive thing, but you think about it, you are feeling the worst that you've ever felt in your life, and then you try to impose positive thinking over the top of that. It can work temporarily, but then partly your brain says, so now you're a liar on top of everything else as well. Like, you are feeling as crappy, as shitty as you've ever felt in your life. And you're pretending that everything's all good. Like, who the hell are you kidding? Like, it's not, and you know it's not. But now you create this other split in yourself where you're in the process of lying to yourself. And so, you know, I needed to stop lying to myself and say, this is all okay, and I'll get through it, and I'll work my way through it, and all that kind of stuff. And instead say, the process isn't working. Let's look at something that's not been done so far. And up to that point, I hadn't really taken a neuroscientific approach, which is what I did, which is where the main healing came from, and which is what eventually then turned into the mind map program that you spoke about at the beginning, which was a complete about face for me compared to the approach that I was taking to goals before that.
So with that, and I think this is probably the way that you really become a master at something. You did it out of a self-need first, right? Like, you were struggling and whatnot, and you had to master this to get out of the pain you were in. Where did you even start with it? I mean, I know you had the background with the neuro rehab and whatnot, but like, what book did you start with, or how did you even start piecing this together?
Yeah, I started with a whole bunch of, I guess you could say, stuff that bridged the pop psychology and the neuroscience, right? So yeah, I didn't dive deep into neuroscience immediately, but I wanted to know kind of what people with a neuroscientific background was saying about some of the stuff that I was going through. So people like Rick Hansen, for example, with Buddha's brain and that side of stuff. And you know, then I'd already known about, for example, triune brain theory, but kind of, you know, there are a lot of people talking about triune brain at the time. And obviously I've developed past that now. Kind of in my latest teachings, I talk about how the triune brain isn't as fixed as we once thought. But it was a really good way of thinking about it at the time. And I still, even in my courses to this day, even though triune brain as a scientific concept has been disproven, triune brain as a working metaphor for helping us to understand what's going on is really, really still useful. It's very useful. It's a good story to start the exploration. And so that kind of brought me into, right, okay, so what's going on in my brain at the kind of the three levels, at the human level, the mammalian level, the reptilian level, and so on and so forth, and started to explore that. And what are some of the mechanisms that might be triggering that? And so it took me deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole of neuroscience. So I read, you know, pretty much all of the kind of the landmark books on the subject. I literally have hundreds and hundreds of books on neuroscience. At that time, I was reading about 100 neuroscience papers per year, minimum. minimum, which in a way now it doesn't really sound that much. It's only like two papers a week, but when you're doing that for years and years on end, it actually adds up into, you know, you reading thousands and thousands of neuroscience papers, which gives you a pretty good grounding. And it also, then obviously with every paper and every book that you read, it opens up another series of questions. You go, okay, well, this guy's saying this and that guy's saying that, but they're both learned people. And so what is it that's either incorrect, unskillful, or is being discussed situationally? Like, can they both be wrong? Sure they can. Can they both be right? Sure they can, right? But can they both be right while they're saying something different? And then you start to explore and you go, oh, well, yeah, this person is discussing something that happens when you're in one area of your brain, so to speak. And this guy is discussing something that happens when you're in another area of your brain, when that one becomes dominant. And so it started to kind of, the jigsaw puzzle started to come together in this storyline of, right, it's not like we have a brain, we have a number of networks, we have a number of circuits that are responsible for different things at different times with different stimuli in different environments. And so it's a much more fluid kind of thing than most of us maybe realize. We tend to, I think as we get a bit older, we start to think that there's a way that we are. Like, that's just how I am, and it's probably how I'll always be. And we come to that conclusion based upon things that we've done or how we tend to respond in certain situations. And what I came to understand is that actually I can change my relationship with the triggers. I can change my relationship with the environments. I can change my relationship with the subsequent actions that I will take when I am triggered. So I can change all of those things. And by definition, when you change those things, you essentially change yourself. You transform, literally change shape.
When did you realize that this was working on yourself? And then the next step beyond that, when did you realize, okay, this is something that I have to teach and share with people?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I'd had a business, and that business up until that point had been really successful. And I wanted to keep teaching, but I'm the kind of guy, I'm not going to teach something that I know is untrue or doesn't work. And so, you know, you think about it, like, not only was I having this existential crisis of, you know, I'd been really successful in my careers, really, really well known as a trainer. I was on TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, all this kind of stuff. And then the thing that I kind of had got known for, the goal achievement and pushing through and getting what you want, I didn't believe in anymore because it stopped working for me. And so I was like, well, crap, that's one of my businesses down the tubes. It's like, how am I going to go back out into the world and teach this when I don't believe it? But yet that was a major source of my income. What do I do? And I was like, well, start teaching them what you do now believe, what you do now know. And it took a bit of work and it took a bit of reconfiguration. But then, you know, as I dived deeper into it and as I got that clearer understanding of different brains responsible for different aspects, you know, it became clearer to me how each part, it's not like we throw away all the goal achievement part and pretend it doesn't matter. Like, you can still have goals, but it's understanding when having the goals and pursuing them with all vigor and hustle is a skillful thing to do, and when it's not. And so that's where the first iterations of Mind Map were really about marrying up the new approach to the old approach, and kind of mostly teaching coaches how to understand their own brains. And I think that's one of the things I'm proudest of the Mind Map approach, is that, yeah, it's great. Like, you know, I see you going out into the world and you're making great inroads into the lives of other people. And I see that with so many other Mind Map coaches, which is fantastic. But the thing I'm proudest about is that you all seem to be doing that because of the profound difference it's made in your own lives. Oh. And so now it's not like something you have to sell or something you have to persuade or push or bullshit your way through. Like, some things, you know, we've all done courses and we go, well, I've done this course and it seems to be saying the right thing, so let me add that into my business and teach it, right? And then the next year we go, I'm taking that back out again and I'm going to replace it with this new course I've been on, right? And we constantly do that. One of the things I found with Mind Map is it makes such a profound transformation in the coaches themselves that it's kind of like a no-brainer for the coaches' clients themselves to look at them and go, wow, look how much Dax has changed. Look how much Carl has changed. Look how much so-and-so. And they go, well, yeah, I want me some of that. Yeah. And that's kind of like the approach I really took. So whilst I do want to make a major impact in the world with Mind Map itself, my first priority is always, how can I help my coaches to transform the way they approach life? because if I do that, this is going to permeate its way out into society anyway, and people are going to use it. If I can't help you to transform your life, then basically most of this is going to stop with you. It gets to you, you go, yeah, it was an interesting course I did once, but yeah, I've done 10,000 other mindset courses since then, and I'm a little bit of this, a little bit. And I tend to think people end up with a bit of a Frankenstein's monster approach. It's kind of like they stitch together all these bits that don't quite work. And I'm not saying mine is the final product. It really isn't. It's transformed again, right? But it's because what I do is I try to work within principles. When new methods come along, I can hold the method up to the principle and say, well, which principle does this fit? And then you slap that new methodology into an existing principle, and it seems to work really well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's really been it's unbelievable, you know, and I rave about it. It was something I really believe in, and life changing for me, like you said, big time. And that just makes me want to keep sharing it, you know.
Yeah.
Talk about I don't know. I don't think you still teach the other ones, but you had, maybe you do. I think you had Biomap and Body Map too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what they were.
Yeah. So Body Map was the one that really got a lot of people's attention, because Body Map was using neuroscience, like the physical aspects of neuroscience, to bring about the kind of changes that most people think either can't happen or can only happen over really extended periods of time. So I'd work with a person would come and see me, and they'd say that they, you know, have such extreme back pain and they hadn't been able to reach below their knees for the last 5 years, you know, and sometimes they can't even reach their knees. It's so terrible. And very often in less than 3 minutes, sometimes in less than about 20 seconds, I'd be able to get them reaching all the way down and touching the floor. And that's by stimulating their nervous system through their eyes, through their vestibular system, through balance systems, through proprioceptive stimulation on joints and stuff. And they would look like someone's just done voodoo on them or something, or some kind of witchcraft. There's like people would burst into tears like on the spot. They go, how the hell did that happen? I can't mention the person's name, but like a high level, let's say Olympic standard British athlete who came with their physio, because the physio had heard about me, and they said that they've got, you know, they're training for the Olympics, but they had this frozen shoulder and it wasn't getting any better, and that the physio had stretched it and done all PNF stuff on it and done some myofascial release, and they always get a few inches back, but by the time they see the athlete again the next time, it's all locked down again, and they're confounded, you know, didn't really know what to do, and the athlete came in, and about 5 or 6 minutes into our session had them, you know, full range of motion again, back in the shoulder, pain free. We tested them with force drivers as well, and they were able to produce force through it. So they had all their function back again, and it was just like mind blown. So that's the Body Map program. And again, it's just using neuroscience. Like the brain has specific demands for how it wants stimulus to be applied to it, and then how it's going to interpret that stimulus, and then use that stimulus as a catalyst for the next movement being produced, right? And so if you can learn to read what the nervous system wants, and you can provide it, most of the things that we do as trainers and coaches and therapists and all that kind of stuff, most of that stuff can go by the buyer. You don't have to have people doing extensive stretching prior to training, and you know, all of that kind of stuff. You don't have to be caught up in the old ways of producing strength and force. You can actually say, what happens if I actually let more of the nervous system come to play on these joints? And as long as the joints are sound, which most of the time they are, like, you know, one of the amazing things about the Body Map system was that, you know, a lot of people were in pain, and I say, I've had this pain for like 10 years, like it just doesn't go away, or yeah, I can get it away in certain positions, or if I take certain meds, but it's just been there for so long. And they've convinced themselves that they have injuries, and they go to therapists and physical therapists and osteopaths and chiropractors, and they're saying, yeah, you've clearly injured that joint. I'm like, one of the things I've been able to help them understand is that pain isn't indicative of injury. It rarely is. Like if I get hit by a bus, of course I'm suffering pain because of trauma. But if I've got ongoing pain, like, an injured site doesn't remain injured. Like tissue remodeling doesn't take 10 years for a tissue to remodel, right? So if 10 years later, I'm still feeling pain there, that's not an injury. That's not trauma. That's something else going on. And that's usually going to be related to the nervous system. And if you give the nervous system what it wants, they'll go, oh, okay, I'll let that go now. So that we come to understand that pain is a signal, and that signal is being given to you for interpretation. It's like, I'm trying to tell you something here. You get given, like, in the first instance, when we're kind of being told by our nervous system that something's not right, we generally tend to be made weaker. That's in the first instance. You'll notice that kind of when you're training, like I can normally bench like 250, and now kind of 220 is like a lot of effort. So that's one of the first signals the brain gives you when the nervous system is unhappy. Then then you keep training and you keep trying to blast through it, right? Hustle, hustle, hustle. And then your brain says, okay, well, I tried to do the weakness thing on you. Let me do the range of motion thing on you. And now you notice that when you're benching, one side goes deeper than the other and you can't quite get there. It says, okay, well, I'm doing the range of motion thing on you. And what are you doing? You're stretching the devil out of the shoulder. You're just trying to get it back through force, right? Hustle, hustle, hustle again. And then the next thing it says, okay, well, I've tried the weakness thing on you, and I've tried the strength thing on you, and I've tried the range of motion thing on you. And now, so what we're going to do is we're going to give you a little bit of pain. You're just going to get a little bit of twinge whenever you do this. And you ignore it and you train for the twinge. And it says, okay, let me turn the volume up on pain. And there comes a point where eventually pain gets so high that it doesn't have to keep turning the volume up. And you go, oh, now you tell yourself you've got an injury. But that's not necessarily so. You've got your nervous system wants something. You're not giving it. And so it's going to keep telling you, it'll keep signaling you in whatever way is the most efficacious to get you to stop doing what you're doing and pay attention. And so, yeah, there are a lot of people out there who have benefited from the body map courses. Unfortunately, it's a very practical course, and with COVID and stuff like that, it meant that I can't be, well, I might be able to start again soon, but up until now, I've not been able to be in rooms touching people and having people touching other people and all of that kind of stuff. So, it's a very hands-on course. Yeah, and of course, there's the bio map. I'll give you a shorter explanation of that, but the bio map explains what goes on in what I refer to as our biological terrain. So basically everything that's on the inside of us, but particularly from a digestive and endocrinological, hormonal perspective, and the understanding about just how different we are inside. We're just as different inside as we are on the outside. And yet people tend to follow these gross rules of you should eat this particular carbohydrate, fat, protein mix, or you should only eat at these times of day and not at those times of day, or you should try and eat more meals, or you should try and eat less meals. And it's not that any of those things are wrong. It's that they're not usually tuned in to the individuals around you. They're more of a they're more taking more of a homogenous approach. Imagine if on the outside, how spooky and weird it would be if everybody that walked down the street, literally every single person that walked down the street looked like us and sounded like us and moved like us. It'd be weird as hell, right? And yet we flip to the internal environment, the internal terrain of being human, and then we say, oh, we're all the same on the inside. Like, it's just calories in, calories out, and you've got to take this and you've got to take that. I was like, no, there's a bit more to it than that. And some of us have higher tolerances for some things that other people find completely toxic. Some people can drink a whole bottle of vodka and get up the next day and go to work. Other people can take a glass of it and then not be able to work for 3 days because they're completely out of it with a hangover, right? Some people can take more fat and not get heart disease. Some people can eat vegetarian and get heart disease. Like, how does that work? And it's because our biological terrains are so individual. And I think most people are trying to apply one size fits all. So I think if you were to summarize all three of those maps, body map, bio map, and mind map, what it's really about, and that's where the word map comes in, right? The idea is that we're creating our own maps of who we are as individuals, how we show up physically, how we show up psycho-emotionally, and how we show up digestively and endocrinologically, and saying that there's enough similarities about us to call us human and say that we all have certain needs, which is true. Every human being needs protein, fat, and carbohydrate. Every human being needs water. Every human being needs sleep, and so on and so forth. But do we all need it in the same proportions? Do we all get triggered by the same thing? Like, as a soldier, being on the ranges and hearing gunshots go off mean nothing to me. I fall asleep whenever I go to the ranges and it's not my turn to fire. Right, I just lay down in the back and kind of put my headphones in and kind of listen to music until the shooting's over. But you know, you're walking down the street and you hear a gunshot and you've never been around guns in your life, you probably jump out of your skin. It's exactly the same stimulus, but applied to a different person in a different setting, in a different situation. And you know, so you see how individuality becomes so important in our approach.
Yeah, it's fascinating what you've done, piecing this together. Is biomap one that are you teaching that currently too, or is that one?
That's also a kind of a bit dormant, but it will pick up again. One of the things that I found is that biomap normally sells for me off the back of the other two. So it's normally the third one that people want to go to, if you know what I mean. And because I've not been doing as much selling of the other two because of lockdown, kind of the demand for that one is a bit low.
Sure. If you come back to the States to do it, man, you could definitely host it at one of our spots.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to.
That'd be great.
As soon as you Americans let us back in, we're all kicked out at the moment. I'm not back, so I'm not allowed in.
Oh no, man, me neither. I'm getting shirts made that say that pure blood. I'll get a send you one. So no, I'm just being mindful of the time. I know we got about 5-6 minutes. Talk about, because I could talk to you about that. So I love listening to that stuff. I see the guitar behind you. Just talk about, so the impact you've made has been worldwide, but how do you keep your life in harmony? Like, I know you play the guitar. I know you before COVID, right? You're traveling all over the place. You seem to be a great father and a great husband. How do you keep everything in harmony?
Well, first of all, I don't think I do. I don't think I keep everything in harmony. I'm like everybody. Like, I have my good days, my bad days. Some days the PTSD still catches up with me a little bit, but so that's the distinction. And I always want to make clear about mind map. It's not some great panacea that takes everything away, but it makes you more aware. And so the way I describe it is that when I was in the depths of the PTSD, I would visit PTSD frequently. I'd stay there for a long time and I would be fully immersed in it, right? Now I visit PTSD infrequently. My visits are short. And when I'm there, I dip my toe in it and kind of realize, whoa, you're going in the wrong direction, and come back out, right? So that's kind of, you know, that's one of the aspects. That's the real life-changing part, because we're never going to be without stressors. And so I wouldn't say I have my life in harmony. And in fact, because of COVID, my life is a bit disharmonious at the moment. And from the perspective of I've never been one of those guys who wants to own the big mansion and the big fancy cars and all that kind of stuff, right? I bought a brand new Land Rover Discovery in 2005, and I still drive it now, right? It's my favorite vehicle. I've got no intention of changing it. I live in a really modest home, but my one thing that all the way back in the day, I said, one day when I make it, I will, and we all have those stories. My one day when I make it, I will was never about possessions. It was about places. It was about things I was going to do, see, experience. And so I've spent a lot of my money over the years doing that. You know, kind of a few years ago, I was in Everest. You know, kind of I've spent a lot of money doing all of those things, and it's how I like to spend my money. And you know, the last 2 years, it been like all the places I really love visiting, kind of been off the menu for me, so I can't go there. So that's, you know, life does feel a bit disharmonious for me at the moment, but no, I guess no more so than anyone else, and probably a lot less so than many people. You know, like I don't forget that I have a lot of options and opportunities available to me that, you know, that many people might not have. So, but I'm looking forward to getting back to travel. But that was the long answer. The short answer to your question is I still do a lot of reading, a hell of a lot of reading. That's one of my go-tos. I train pretty much every day. I mean, it's rare that I won't train a minimum of 6 days per week. Okay. Sometimes lifting heavy. At the moment, I've had COVID twice. I had COVID at the beginning of the year, and it took me a while. I got off the back of that, I got a chest and lung infection because I damaged my lungs at Everest. So I got a chest and lung infection. And it took me a while to kind of find my feet again. And then when I got into training, I was so pissed at getting, you know, being taken out of it for a few weeks that I kind of jumped into training a bit too quick, and then all my joints flared up, and they were all a bit angry at me. So I've kind of backed off, and I'm training every day, but I'm doing light training, so I'm not doing any ego lifts. Everything is just kind of either very, very high reps with light weights, excuse me, or kind of doing sort of like matrix type patterns, and isometrics and all kinds of stuff like that in there, so I can keep the muscle size and the strength that I've gained, but give my joints a bit of a break. But yeah, and just recently, I mean, one of the things is I've been out of green for many years. Being a soldier, I'm 51 now. I've got grey in my beard. I know you've got some there as well. I've been out of the forces for quite some time. But one of the things that lockdown did for me was, because I wasn't able to train, because I wasn't able to travel, and that's so important, and because I wasn't running on my courses, and that's so important. And obviously, I like the money side of my courses, but more important, you could say, is that I like the fact that I'm able to make a difference. I go out there and people's jaws drop and they go, wow. And so there's clearly a bit of ego caught in that as well. I like being on the stage and talking to people, but I genuinely like the kind of seeing the impact that my mad ramblings make to people. And so one of the things I did is I went back and I became an Army Cadet Force instructor. So I'm working with youths now. So for the past 5 months, I get into uniform a few times a week, and I go down to the cadet unit and I teach them everything from physical training to weapon handling to paramedic skills and all of that kind of stuff, because I've got quite an extensive background in all of those areas. And yeah, it's been really, really good fun, and it's just really good seeing kids. They range from 12 to 18. With the average being around about the 14, 15 mark. So just seeing kids responding to being challenged and all that kind of stuff. So that's been a really good outlet for me, and a good sense of just reconnecting to something purposeful while my main outputs have been reduced a bit.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. I got so many more questions. Next time I'm going to ask you a lot more about Everest too. I completely forgot you did that. We don't have time for that right now. So 2 more quick things. I know Conversations with God, the book, Neil Donald Walsch, that was your favorite. Is that still your favorite book?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I read it a couple of times every year.
Is that right?
Yeah. I go back through it, like the entire series. There are like 9 books, and then there's a bunch of like addendum kind of books that come alongside of it. But yeah, I read them all constantly, and I get every time I read it, I get something different from it. Kind of it's that whole, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And so sometimes I'm going, oh, right, yeah, I know that. I've got that bit down. I'm squared away on that. And I'll sit there and I'll read it, and you'll read it and you'll get a different context to it than you got from last time. You go, oh, and then like sometimes I might be stuck on one section. I might just like spend 2 or 3 days thinking about whatever caused me to pause at that point. I'll go, damn, what does that mean then? And how does that fit into my life and who I'm becoming? And so when I first used to read it, it was like literally like cover to cover. Now it's very contemplative process. It's a lot slower, and it's like having a coach. It's like having a coach in your back pocket.
Yeah. I got to get the other ones in the series. I only have the original that you told me about.
Yeah, there's loads. There's loads.
And last thing, where can people, I'll put all this in the show notes, but where can people find out more about Mind Map or just follow you? What's the best way for them to?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate that there's literally only one Dax Moy in the world at the moment, right? With that name combination. So if you Google me, you'll find me. If I use Facebook a lot more than I use any of the other social media. Although my presence on Facebook is a lot less than it ever used to be. Like I used to show up literally every day. Now I kind of show up more if I really feel like I've got something to add to the conversation or something I really want to talk about. I used to kind of back in the day feel like, oh, you have to show up every day. I impose these rules upon myself. But now it's just like, yeah, I'm not feeling like a Facebook version of Dax Moy today. I'm feeling like kind of let the world do its thing and sit there happily in the background, drinking a cup of coffee and reading your favorite book. But you can find me daxmoy.com. But regarding the actual coaching courses, mindmapcoach.com is the best place to go. And okay. the newest version of Mind Map, the 3.0 version, is coming out. The next intake is in May. So
is that the mastery one that I'm doing, or is that a newer one?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's the newer master. You're enrolled on that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
On the newest one, 3.0. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be May when I'm taking in the next cohort. So I know some people are really good solo learner. Like I prefer to be a solo learner. When I join a course, I really like to just go through it in my own time. And sometimes I'll consume 3 months worth of a course in like 4 days. So I just sit there and kind of work my way through it. And then other times I'll take 3 months off, you know. So I like to be a solo learner, but I do know that a lot of people prefer the kind of cohort approach, and they like the idea of working through material and having back and forward conversations with people about what they're learning. So I try to do a little bit of both, where it's kind of cohort approached but you know, usually if somebody wants to approach me and say, can I get going today, the answer is usually yes, to be honest, because who am I to hold them up?
Well, listen, man, this has been great. I know you got to get to an appointment. Let me just stop this here.